Listen, if you create a reading challenge, I will participate. So today we're doing my horror bingo TBR. This is a year-long reading challenge starting on October 1st and going till September 30th of next year. This was created by Sarah from Wicked Reading. I'll leave her channel and the announcement video down below. I love Sarah, so you should check her out. If you're familiar with the Our Fantasy Bingo Challenge that runs every year, Sarah just essentially created her own for horror because she was like, why don't we have something like this for horror? So it runs exactly the same. It's a giant bingo board. There are easy mode prompts and then there are also hard mode prompts that like add on to the easy mode. Because I have no chill, and even though I only read very specific types of horror that people around me tell me to pick up, I'm still attempting to do all hard mode. If you're even just thinking about dabbling in horror, I would definitely check it out. You do not need to black out the board. You can just do one row of bingo, but I'm an overachiever, so I will be trying to black out my board. I would also love to make my comment section a recommendation thread. So if you have recommendations for any prompt on this board, easy mode or hard mode, please drop it down below so that if someone's just struggling with the prompt, they can scroll through the comments and find some, because I always find that super helpful. But let's get right on into the bingo board. The first square we need to fill out is pubbed in 2024, and the hard mode for this is that I have to read it in 2024. I picked Chuck Tingle's Bury Your Gaze, which is a new release by him, and I will read it probably in October or November, so it'll hit hard mode for me. I can honestly tell you that I know absolutely nothing about this pick. I just had read Camp Damascus by this author last year and I enjoyed it, and with everyone hyped about this release and loving this book, I figured I'd pick it up and read it. I know there's something about Hollywood, and knowing Chuck Tingle, there's gonna be some really good discussion in this as well. The next square is apocalyptic, and the hard mode for this is that it has to have an epilogue. This is honestly a very hard mode to pick for a TBR, because without having the book in front of me, I can't really check if it has an epilogue. And for this one, I picked Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McCloy Chapman. This is his new release for next year. It's set to come out January 7th. I have loved Clay McCloy Chapman in the past. Ghost Eaters is my favorite horror book, but I've also disliked some. Ghost Eaters has an epilogue, and so does his most recent one. So I'm assuming that this one will as well. I don't know a lot about this. I know there's something about getting a text about the end is near, and then I think that there's like a parasite that is affecting everyone. It may be a little bit zombie-ish. Goodreads says for fans of The Last of Us and When Evil Lurks. And it says families across the country are tearing each other apart, literally, as people succumb to a form of possession that gets worse the more time they spend watching particular channels, using certain apps, or visiting certain websites. Oh, I'm intrigued because I actually read a short story by Clay McCloy Chapman that has a similar concept on this about watching Fox News. And I really liked that short story. And just like in his other books, I'm expecting really good commentary. I mean, something about Fox News. If you know, you know. Like Fox News turning you into a zombie. Peak literature in my opinion. So I'm really excited about this one. The next square is Halloween, which for this prompt has to take place on Halloween at some point, or just like really close to Halloween in the fall season. But the hard mode for this is Trick or Treat. Again, I found this a really hard mode because how do I know if a book says Trick or Treat in it anywhere? And I don't really read a lot of like Halloween specific books. I did see someone comment on Sarah's video saying One Must Go by Alex Reed, so that's what I have down. They said it's about some murders. I think it's kind of a slasher, and the slashing happens on Halloween. Goodreads says every year a new group is chosen, every year there must be a sacrifice. A laughing drunken god picks 3 middle school children for his deadly ritual. 2 may live as long as they pick 1 to die, which has me intrigued. The next prompt is blood on the cover, and the hard mode for this is that the blood takes up most of the cover. It's like predominant on the cover. I'm picking Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. If you look at this book, there's blood everywhere. I think it counts for hard mode. This is a short story novella by Darcy. I believe there's 5 stories in this, 2 of which are novella length and then 3 more shorter stories. But the main one is Ghost Camera. Most of Darcy's books actually have a bunch of short stories in them after the main story. And in Ghost Camera, we're following a main character who finds a camera, and when it takes pictures, she can see the dead, which I think sounds really cool. I have read a short story collection from Darcy before, Quarter to Midnight, that I actually really enjoyed. I think Darcy does haunted house stories really well, but actually my favorite stories from her are the non-haunted house ones, so I am really excited to read this from her. The next prompt is a story that takes place in the woods or the wilderness, and the hard mode for this is that there's no trees on the cover. This is hard to know without having read the story, so I actually have one that doesn't hit hard mode. I have Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. There are trees on this cover. Down here, that's all trees, so it does not count for hard mode. but it is a camp slasher story. We're following our main character, Willow, who gets canceled by the internet, and she ends up going to Camp Castaway, which is a summer camp for adults who are trying to leave their past behind. However, one of the campers vanishes, and Willow finds a mutilated doll's head in her room with a threatening message rolled up inside. Terror grips the groups. Campers begin to lose their heads, literally, and disturbing past deeds come to light. Is Willow about to get canceled all over again, this time for good? I'm really intrigued to read this one, but it sadly does not hit hard mode. If you have any recommendations for hard mode, let me know down below. It is something that I was struggling with, because how do I know if it exists in the woods without there being trees on the cover? Or like, I feel like just a lot of the wood horrors have trees on the cover, because like that's the vibe of the story. The next square we have is honoring the classics, and not gonna lie, I'm not a classic reader. I have no interest in reading classics. Sarah did say that we get one free space, and so this will be my free space. I'm just gonna use it as a mood read, put a book randomly on my TBR. I do want to read Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates during spooky season, so this might go on it. But yeah, it's just a free space for me. I just have no interest in reading classic fantasy, classic horror. I'm just not a classics girly. The next square we have is translated, and the hard mode for this is that it has a translator note. Again, I found this one a little bit difficult because I had to have the physical book in front of me to see if it had a translator note. But luckily, I went to my friend Lexi, Books with Lexi, and asked her for some suggestions, and she suggested Walking Practice by Dolke Min and translated by Victoria Caudle. She says it does have a translator note. She checked for me. This follows an alien's hunt for food, and it turns into an existential crisis about what it means to be human. Lexi told me it's weird, and I'm in for that. First paragraph on Goodreads says, after crashing their spacecraft in the middle of nowhere, a shape-shifting alien find themselves stranded on an unfamiliar planet and disabled by Earth's gravity. To survive, they will need to practice walking. And what better way than to hunt for food as they discover humans are delicious. I also know that they do hunt their prey by attempting to have intercourse with them and then eating them. And I'm very excited to see how this happens in this story. Next up, we have cover pick, and the hard mode is that you don't read the synopsis for this. I feel like this is probably more of an author pick. However, I love this author's covers, and like looking at this cover, I would have cover picked this as well, which is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I am a Nat Cassidy fangirl. I love Nat Cassidy books. They're some of my favorites, and this cover just looks absolutely super cool. I'm not allowed to read the synopsis, so I can't tell you what it's about because it's a cover pick, but trust me, it's going to be incredible. The next square is a Reaper read, a book involving death, but the hard mode for this is that death is personified. Impossibly hard, in my opinion, to find recommendations for this online in the horror genre. I know so many fantasies that do this, but was really struggling with horrors. I did, however, find A Mask of Flies by Matthew Lyons. I've never read from this author before, but this book does sound really interesting. We're following a criminal and a cop she's taken hostage, and her partner. But her partner ends up going missing and returning dead. So Anne gives her a burial, she buries her down, and the next day, well, her partner returns again. But this time it's clear that it is not her partner and she doesn't know what exactly is going on. And so I'm hoping, since that like this person comes back to life, they'll kind of be like a little bit of death incarnate, a little bit of zombie-ish style. And I think I'm probably gonna count something like that because I just found this prompt like, I really struggled with this, but if you have any recommendations, please leave them down below. I'm looking for things that hit hard mode. And next up, we have a spooky word in the title, and the hard mode for this is 2 spooky words in the title. I'm gonna go with Clown in a Cornfield 3. I'm counting clown and I'm counting cornfield as a spooky word, but I think you could also count friendo and, in my opinion, church. But friendo is definitely very terrifying, but clown and cornfield are really the words I was going for. And it is the whole title. Like, the title is Clown and Cornfield 3, The Church of Friendo. This is the 3rd book in the series, and I've given the other 2 5 stars. I don't really know a lot about what happens in this one. I know it's a cult. I know we're taking down, like, the cult of friendo from our main character, who has been haunted by friendo, and she really just wants everyone to stop praising friendo because she lived through the trauma of friendo. I'm just really excited. If you have not read these stories, I think that they're great YA slashers filled with like political discussions and deep thoughts and characters that you feel for. My favorite slasher. The next one is Reanimated Corpses or Zombies, and the hard mode for this is that it's part of a series. I will probably read the next Voices in the Snow book, which is called Secrets in the Dark, which is literally a zombie book by Darcy Coates. However, also Feed by Mira Grant, I believe, hits hard mode for this as well, and I am intrigued by that one, but most likely I will continue on in a series, and since I've already started Voices in the Snow, I'll read on. The next square is a genre bend, and the hard mode for this is a genre you don't normally read. I'm picking a sci sci-fi horror. I read a lot of sci-fi horrors. Sci-fi is not a genre that I pick up regularly by myself. Actually, I'm learning that I don't think I really like sci-fi by itself. I only like sci-fi genre blends. So that's why I'm picking this for hard mode. There's not a lot of things that I don't read unless we're going like literary, but like I don't know if I'm willing to put myself in that. So for this I'll be picking up the next essay Barnes that comes out next year called Cold Eternity. It's set to pub on April 8th and this one looks really interesting, although all of essay Barnes have been 3 stars for me in the past, but I just keep hoping that the next one is really going to do it for me. This one follows our main character who is trying to run away from like a political scandal, and she ends up hiding in a spaceship that hosts Earth's most wealthiest citizens in Sleep. However, as she is hiding in this spaceship, she starts to hear noises and she thinks she may have got herself in an even more dangerous situation than the one she left at home. Next up, we have a 5-star read, and the hard mode is that you predicted it to be 5 stars. For this, I'm going to put Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. This is a short story coming out by him in like a month. And again, I've loved all his other books, so I just predicted to be 5 stars. Something about someone being stranded at a rest stop, and that's all I know. It's such a short story that I don't want to know anymore. I'm avoiding reading the synopsis, things like that, but I'm super excited to dive into this one. Next up, we have a BIPOC author, and the hard mode for this is a nudie author. I'm picking Confessions by Kanae Minato. I've heard really good things about this story. I feel like this is a booktube darling that I have not read yet. Everyone was screaming about this like 2 years ago, and I need to get on it because I'm behind the times and I'm really intrigued. I believe it's told in like some shorter short storied like chapters that are all like following something, and I believe there's something about a teacher and a student getting into something and it leading to maybe the demise of the entire school or like endangering the entire school. I don't really know a lot. I'm going into this one pretty blind. I'm just really excited. Everyone I know has loved this, so I'm super excited. Also, Jenny, whoever you are, I need your personal number because your sticker is on a lot of the books I pick up. And I am really bad and rarely take stickers off, so I truly see it on a lot of the books I pick up. So Jenny, if you're out there, call me, beat me, if you want to reach me. Next up is a cryptid creature, which is like a creature that science has said isn't real, but people think could exist, I think is kind of the idea. So like a mermaid, Bigfoot, things like that, not just like a random creature. And hard mode is that you don't know anything about the creature, and I'm gonna pick Below because I believe that it has something to do with Mothman, and I know absolutely nothing about Mothman. I read from this author before and I liked it, didn't love it. I found it kind of boring, to be honest. But I think people like this one better from what I know. And so I'm gonna go into this blind and just trust the process. The last one I read from her was really short, so I'm expecting this one to be really short. So again, I don't know a lot, but I do know that it has something to do with Mothman. And I know nothing about Mothman. The next is Title Has a Number, and the hard mode is that it has 2 numbers. Sarah did say she was thinking like 2 separate numbers in her video, but this was impossible in my opinion if I didn't want to read Stephen King. Stephen King has so many that fit hard mode, but this was absolutely impossible. So if you have recommendations, leave them down below, but I don't want to read King. I do not want to read King's Son. Like, that's just not it for me. So I have 13 stories. Technically 13 is written out, which he said counts, but it probably only counts for 1. But because technically 13 is 1, 3, 2 numbers, which she said doesn't count, but I'm gonna count. I'm gonna count it for hard mode at this point in time because there's nothing else that I'm interested in reading that fits it. Honestly, I couldn't find anything that fits it, so I'm counting it. Also, the numbers are all over this cover, so I feel like that could count. Like, there's so many numbers. Maybe not what she meant when making the prompt, but like, I love a good prompt stretch, and to make this fun for me, I didn't want to just lose out because I didn't want to read Nosferatu. So this is my stretchable prompt. There's something about a bunch of people being invited to a dinner party here and no one knowing each other, not even the host. And by the end of the night, the host ends up dead, but none of the guests will talk. But I believe this is their 13 stories about what happened. I'm super intrigued. This is a Lexi recommendation. The next one is the Satanic Panic prompt, meaning something about the occult. And the hard mode for this is that it uses like an occult item within the story. Again, how am I supposed to know that? But I'm making my best educated guesses here, meaning like a tarot card or a Ouija board or something like that. I'm going with Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, which is the newest Grady Hendrix that comes out next year. Me and Grady have not a good past, but I gave one of his books 5 stars, and I keep hoping that the next one will be the second 5-star I give, but for the most part I don't really love them, and I'm absolutely terrified of this book, but I'm gonna keep reading them because what if I give it 5 stars? I mean, witchcraft for wayward girls, there has to be something about witchcraft, like a Ouija board, something has to be used in this, so I'm just assuming. The next prompt is a book club pick, and the hard mode is there is no hard mode. She thought this was hard enough. For this, I'm picking So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This is actually mine and Mel's Patreon book club that we run together. We're reading this in September for the book club. I'm just gonna read it really early into October so that I can count it for this challenge. And it's only Discord, so everyone will be okay with it, because technically it's a bi-monthly, so we don't have a new pick until November anyway, so a lot of people read them September, October, and this will work for me. So Thirsty is a vampire story by Rachel Harrison. We're following our main character. She ends up going on a vacation with her best friend because her husband is trash and full of red flags and she needs to leave him. They go for a night out on the town and they end up meeting a suspicious looking group of men that may be vampires, and what that leads to we will find out in the story. Rachel Harrison does lead a little bit literary, but I'm excited to see where this story takes. Next up is Pink Horror, which is a story about womanhood or girlhood, and the hard mode is that it's a debut to Rachel Harrison's back-to-back. I have The Return. I do find that most of her books tend to be about womanhood, girlhood in some sort, and I know that this is following two close friends where one goes missing and then ends up coming back 2 years later, and it's not the same Julie who came back. I just feel like this will follow a lot of the womanhood, girlhood things that I just know Rachel Harrison for. I also think this is her debut. I could be wrong, and maybe this isn't. If it's not, someone please correct me. So I think this hits hard mode. Next prompt is multiple POVs. The hard mode for this is multiple timelines. And I'm picking We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clier? I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. I believe there's mixed media in this, and so I'm kind of counting that as multiple POVs because the mixed media comes from a different POV than the main narration does, I'm assuming. And I do know that it does not follow like a linear timeline, so I'm going to count it as like multiple timeline. Technically, I think it's dual timeline, but I love a little bit of a stretch. Get Out meets Parasite. This is also one of the Reddit no sleep stories, and I've had really good luck with them. It's a haunted house story, but not your typical haunted house story. I don't know a lot about it. So there's something about losing your grip on reality within this house, and I'm really, really intrigued to see what happens in it and if this will be a story for me. The next prompt is a book that has been adapted, and the hard mode is that you haven't seen the adaptation. To be honest, I found this one really hard. I feel like anything that's been adapted, I have either watched or I don't want to read. A lot of King, and I did not want to read King. I have a Delicate Condition on this list, as American Horror Story did a season based around this. I don't know anything about this. I literally looked at lists of adaptations to find things for this prompt. And then I also have Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I don't know about any of those things. I literally was just like, what has adaptations? This was very hard for me. So I'd love some suggestions down below because I'm not sure I'm gonna love either of these books. So if you have better suggestions, leave them down below for me. The next prompt is Out of Your Comfort Zone. The hard mode is an author you've read from before. I have incidents around the house. From what I've heard, the narration style just kind of scares me, and I did like Bird Box, but I didn't love it. And so I'm just nervous about this. I have been avoiding picking up Josh Malerman. A lot of people that I have opposite taste in tend to love his stuff, so I'm nervous, but I've been hearing a lot of people talk about this one, so I'd like to pick it up and try it, but I would say it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone. The next prompt is short story collection, and the hard mode is that it has more than 12 stories. I have a NetGalley arc of Christmas and Other Horrors, which came out last year, that I need to get done, and so that's what I'm going to be reading. It's got a bunch of Christmas short stories, which I think is perfect, so I'll read around Christmas time and hopefully enjoy it. Then the next prompt is TBR Vet, and the hard mode is that it's been on your shelves for more than 2 years. As a not predominant horror reader, it's actually kind of hard because I feel like I don't have a lot of books I'm interested in that sit on my shelf for 2 years in this genre. However, just like Mother has been on my shelf for a very long time, I'm just absolutely terrified of this story and letting Lexi down. But I know absolutely nothing about the story, so I don't know why I'm terrified. I just remember Lexi photoshopping herself into this cover, and I get nightmares from that, so I'm hoping I get nightmares from the story as well. This cover literally is just so freaking creepy. I don't know. I think I'm behind on the times. There's something about baby fever. Oh, and a cult. I remember this is about cults. And the last one is Has Creepy Crawlies, and the hard mode is there's imagery of them on the cover, and I'm struggling with hard mode. The one I currently have down does not have a hard mode, and it's called Bedbugs, and it's about a couple that moves into an apartment, and I think it's in New York, and a lot of New York is having a bed bug infestation, and she thinks there's bed bugs, but no one else can see them, and she's kind of going insane. And I'm intrigued to see what happens in this story about bed bugs, but I do want a hard mode prompt for this, because there's no bed bugs on the cover, because no one else can see them. If you have recommendations for books with bugs in it, I don't think it has to be a bug book, but there has to be bugs within it at some point, like a creepy bug scene, please leave them down below. If you have recommendations for any prompt, please leave them down below. Shout out to Sarah for making this bingo board. I also have a spooky season reading challenge for the next 3 months that I created, and I'm gonna leave that on the screen for you to check out. I think you can do both together very well, and have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.